In the shimmering haze of Abu Dhabi's Corniche, where superyachts glide like silent predators and skyscrapers pierce the sky like polished spears, Sheikh Tariq bin Khalid Al Najjar lived a life most could only imagine in passing daydreams. At 39, he had inherited control of one of the Emirates' oldest family conglomerates. Shipping, real estate, rare earth investments, amassing a fortune estimated north of $3 billion. He was not flashy in the tabloid sense. His power moved quietly through boardrooms and discreet diplomatic channels. Yet beneath the tailored dishdashes and measured smiles lay a man who had never quite trusted affection. Every relationship in his adult life had carried the faint metallic taste of calculation. That changed, or so he believed, on a humid evening in June at the annual Global Heritage Gala in Singapore. The event drew philanthropists, diplomats, and cultural ambassadors under crystal chandeliers in the Marina Bay Sands Ballroom. Tariq attended as keynote speaker, delivering a reserved address on preserving Gulf maritime history through modern conservation funds. Among the guests was Liana Morales, 27, a former Miss Philippines Universe runner-up who had transitioned into advocacy. She ran a foundation that provided scholarships and vocational training for young women from rural Philippine provinces, a cause she spoke about with quiet fire. Her presence at the gala came via sponsorship from a Singapore-based NGO partner. Photographs from that night show her in an emerald gown that caught the light like sea glass, smiling politely during conversations, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo. Tariq noticed her first during the cocktail hour. She was not seeking attention. She listened more than she spoke, nodding thoughtfully as others described their projects. When their paths crossed near the dessert table, he introduced himself simply, no title flourish. She responded with easy warmth, complimenting his speech without flattery. They talked for 20 minutes about coral reef restoration and the parallel struggles of coastal communities in the Philippines and the Arabian Gulf. By the end of the evening, he had her business card and a promise to follow up on potential collaboration. What followed unfolded with the slow inevitability of a tide. Emails turned to video calls. Calls lengthened into late-night discussions about family, ambition, loss. Liana shared stories of growing up in a fishing village in Bohol. Her father's boat lost in a typhoon when she was 12. Her mother's determination to keep her in school through pageants and part-time work. Tariq spoke, sparingly, of his own childhood under the weight of expectation, the brother who had died young in a racing accident, the loneliness that wealth sometimes amplified rather than erased. 8 months later, in February of the following year, they married in a private ceremony on a private island off Ras Al Khaimah. Only 60 guests. Family elders on his side, her mother and a handful of close friends flown in first class from Manila. The press release was understated. A union celebrating shared values in cultural preservation and women's empowerment. No extravagant fireworks, no celebrity performers. Tariq wanted discretion. Liana agreed it felt more authentic. For the first 14 months, the marriage appeared serene. They divided time between Abu Dhabi, Singapore, where she maintained her foundation office, and occasional retreats to a villa in Tuscany. Public appearances were few but warm. She accompanied him to charity launches. He quietly funded expansions of her scholarship program, channeling nearly $8 million through anonymous grants. Friends described them as complimentary, his steady reserve balanced by her gentle optimism. Then came the spring of the third year. Tariq returned early from a business trip to Muscat. He entered their penthouse on the 62nd floor of the Etihad Towers at dusk. The apartment was quiet. Liana had mentioned she would be working late at a satellite office she kept in the city for Philippine community outreach. He poured a glass of sparkling water and walked to the study to review contracts. On the desk sat an unmarked envelope, cream vellum, no stamp, hand-delivered. Inside were financial records, bank statements from accounts in Singapore, Hong Kong, and the Cayman Islands. Transfers totaling just over $21 million, routed through a series of shell companies. The recipient names varied slightly: LM Consulting, Horizon Empowerment Limited, Pacific Bridge Initiatives, but the signature on the authorization forms was unmistakably hers. Tariq sat motionless for nearly an hour. The documents spread before him like evidence at a trial. He recognized some of the transfers, legitimate donations to her foundation, but others led to private investment accounts, luxury property purchases in Manila and Cebu, even a yacht registered in the British Virgin Islands under a nominee. None of it had ever been mentioned. He did not confront her that night. Instead, he hired a discreet forensic accounting firm based in Zurich. 3 weeks later, the report arrived, a meticulously constructed web. Liana had not been born into poverty in Bohol. Her real name was Elena Castillo. She had grown up middle class in Quezon City, daughter of a mid-level bank manager and a schoolteacher. The pageant career was real. She had placed in several national competitions, but the fishing village orphan narrative was fabricated layer by layer over years. More troubling, the foundation she ran had been seeded with seed capital from an earlier relationship, a Singaporean property developer who had quietly settled with her after a 2-year engagement ended abruptly. The settlement, $4 million, had been structured as a charitable endowment to avoid publicity. Similar patterns emerged from 2 prior high-profile relationships, one with a Hong Kong financier, another with a Malaysian industrialist. Each had ended with substantial gifts or parting investments funneled into entities she controlled. The trap, as investigators pieced it together, was not crude blackmail or theft. It was architectural. Liana targeted men of significant means who valued discretion and legacy above spectacle. She presented herself as genuine, altruistic, slightly vulnerable, qualities that disarmed suspicion. Courtship lasted long enough to build emotional investment. Marriage provided legal cover. Community property laws in the UAE, combined with prenuptial agreements she carefully negotiated to protect charitable assets, allowed her to access and redirect funds without immediate alarm. Tariq's case differed in scope. She had waited longer, deepened the connection, even discussed children. The accountants estimated she had positioned herself to claim, in the event of separation or his untimely passing, a settlement potentially exceeding $40 million, disguised as foundation endowments and trust disbursements. When Tariq finally confronted her, it was in the same study, late on a Thursday evening. She arrived home smelling faintly of jasmine perfume and office coffee. He placed the Zurich report on the table without preamble. She read in silence. When she looked up, there were no tears, no frantic denials. Only a calm, almost resigned expression. "I never intended to hurt you," she said quietly. "I wanted security. For myself, for the women I help. The stories, they made the path easier. People give more when they believe in redemption." Tariq asked the question that had haunted him for weeks. Was any of it real? She hesitated, the first crack in her composure. The feelings were. The rest was strategy. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. Instead, he offered terms. Immediate annulment on grounds of fraud. UAE courts would process it swiftly and privately. Full repayment of the $8 million he had personally donated beyond legitimate foundation use, and her permanent departure from the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. In exchange, no criminal complaint, no public disclosure. She would retain control of the legitimate portions of her foundation, the part that actually delivered scholarships, provided she stepped down from leadership. She signed the agreement 2 days later. Liana left Abu Dhabi on a commercial flight to Manila economy class. The foundation continues today under new management, its scholarship program intact but restructured with stricter oversight. Tariq withdrew from public philanthropy for a time, focusing instead on family business expansion. He has not remarried. In rare interviews since, he speaks of the episode as a lesson in vigilance, not cynicism. Trust is earned in actions, not narratives, he once said at a closed-door investors forum. Even the most beautiful story can hide engineering. And somewhere in the quiet offices of Quezon City, a woman who once walked red carpets now works behind the scenes, managing grants for girls who dream of more than beauty crowns. Whether she views the past as a necessary gambit or a miscalculation remains her private truth. The trap was never about destruction. It was about survival dressed as love. A reminder that in a world of immense wealth and guarded hearts, even fairy tales can be built on blueprints.